Now, let's turn our minds back to our top story this morning. India and Pakistan have accused each other of striking military bases. It marks the most significant escalation in the brewing conflict between the two nuclear-armed neighbours. Joining me now, our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. Morning to you, Michael. We can't even let you have a weekend off, can we? We keep talking about this as escalations of tensions, etc. Does it feel like more than that to you?
Not quite yet, because they're still, both sides are still picking their targets rather carefully. So to begin with, the Indian targets were what they said were terrorist bases inside Pakistan-administered Kashmir, and of course one of them in the Punjab, Bahawalpur, which was, not in Kashmir, it was inside Pakistan itself. What the Pakistanis seem to have done overnight is that they have also attacked a target, Amritsar military base, which is also in the Punjab. So they've gone for something in the Punjab as well. And both sides have now moved up to attacking not civilian centres as such, but military bases, although both sides say that civilians are killed, which tends to be the case. I mean, that's probably true on both sides. But both of them are still, as it were, working up a certain sort of target set, which indicates that they don't think they're at war, but they are both trying to make a point militarily. And the other big thing that's happening is that the Indians have now broken the news, something that they initiated about 8 days ago, that their Western fleet have moved a fairly powerful carrier battle group to the northern Arabian Sea. And that puts it only 300 or 400 miles away from Karachi, which is in the western part of Pakistan, way away, far away as you can get from Kashmir. But India is clearly threatening Pakistan. They say if this gets worse and we end up hitting other targets not in any way connected to Kashmir, then Karachi might be one of them, which is, of course, is the major port of Pakistan. So that's an implied escalation. It might get quite a bit worse, but it hasn't got to that stage yet.
Interesting. Historically, the Americans have played quite an important role, haven't they, in diffusing these bubble-ups of tension between the two sides. The Americans have been sort of almost like bystanders. We've had the phone call from Marco Rubio. That's not going to be enough, is it?
No, they're coming to it very late. In the past, the Americans in particular have stepped in really quickly with Europeans and other members of the Security Council and the United Nations to try to diffuse tensions. In this case, other than expressing concern, the United States, in line with Trump administration thinking that they're not going to get involved in other people's wars, have been quite slow to it. But Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, is now making quite strong statements, and the argument is that he ought to be going to the region. I think he's a bit reluctant to do that because, remember, Tony Blinken, who was Biden's Secretary of State, was back and forth to the Middle East. And there was a sense that it represented a kind of an impotence, an inability of the Americans to knock heads together. And I think the Trump administration officials are reluctant to create the same sort of image that somebody's shuttling backwards and forwards. But as of about 12 or 18 hours ago, it looks as if the United States has decided it ought to take more of an interest in this situation, because if it gets worse, then it will be worse for the United States in all sorts of other ways.
Yeah, so very much watch this space about potential US intervention there. It feels significant as well that Pakistan has been using Chinese military equipment, including fighter jets.
Yeah, about something like 80% of Pakistan's top-level equipment is provided by China. Used to be provided by America, but around about 2010, relations between America and Pakistan really deteriorated over Afghanistan. This was during the Biden administration, and the United States now supplies very little equipment to Pakistan. So who's filled the gap? Surprise, surprise, China. So China provides most of Pakistan's high-end military equipment. They always did provide something, but now they provide the more sophisticated stuff. And in particular, the Chengdu J-10 fighter. Chengdu is the Chengdu Aircraft Corporation, aircraft company in China. And the J-10 fighter is one of their standard but most modern fighters. And it looks as if one of Pakistan's J-10 Chinese fighters may have brought down one of India's Rafale French fighters, Rafale, very sophisticated aircraft. Remember when this started, Sam, earlier in the week, the Pakistanis said they brought down 5 Indian aircraft. And I said at the time, I thought that was very unlikely because there was no need for Indian aircraft even to leave Indian airspace in order to deliver missiles to the targets, the 9 targets they covered last week. And indeed, they didn't seem to leave Indian airspace, but it looks as if some Pakistani aircraft fired at Indian aircraft, both of them on their own sides of the border. And there is some evidence, and it's not conclusive yet, but there is some evidence that a J-10 brought down a Rafale fighter. And of course, the reason that the Pakistanis can't produce the evidence of that, the photographic evidence, is that if the Rafale was downed, it almost certainly came down inside India, and the Indians are not going to advertise that fact.
Yeah, and just briefly before we move on to talk about what's happening in Kyiv today, that's the significance of that is that it's really the first time that Chinese military equipment has been tested against what is high-end Western equipment being used by India.
Yes, I mean, defence analysts who worry about these things are poring over that one. First of all, they've got to decide, is it actually true? And it looks as if it probably is. And then secondly, were there special circumstances? Was it a one-on-one fair fight, if you see what I mean, between a J-10 aircraft and a Rafale aircraft? Maybe it was. And they're also looking at the performance of the HQ-9, which is a Chinese air defence missile. And it looks, I mean, it's possible, of course, that it was a Chinese missile that brought down the Rafale. That's not out of the question. So there's still a lot to work out. But undoubtedly, military officials are taking a great interest in this because this would be the first time Chinese high-end equipment has come up against Western high-end equipment.
Let's move on, Michael, while we've got you to talk about what's happening in Kyiv today. A very symbolic show of European leaders there together with President Zelensky. What do you think can realistically be achieved?
Well, there's quite a lot, actually, although in one sense this was a scrambled meeting. I mean, Britain, France, Germany, Poland all coming together in Kyiv in a bit of a hurry. And there is also a meeting going on of the Coalition of the Willing, a lower level meeting taking place. But the point is these 4 leaders, so Keir Starmer, President Macron, Friedrich Merz of Germany, Donald Tusk of Poland, are all now rowing in behind the United States because President Trump, in one of his tweets over 24 hours ago now, if you get through the strangulated syntax and some of the curious punctuation, Trump actually did say 2 quite important things. One is he said that unless Russia accepts the 30-day instant ceasefire, then there will be more sanctions on Russia. And for the first time that I can remember, President Trump said, we and our European allies. He's never mentioned the European allies before in this context. So suddenly he seems to be cognizant of the fact that the Europeans have got a voice in this as well. And so what these leaders are trying to do in Kyiv is to say, yeah, we're rowing in behind that. So you, President Putin, now that you've had your 3-day unilateral ceasefire over the period of the Victory Day parade, now how about the 30-day ceasefire, which Kyiv has accepted, the Americans have proposed, we support it. So why, President Putin, will you not now go along with the 30-day ceasefire? So this meeting is all about heaping pressure on the Russians to go along with the American proposal. We'll see. It's the closest the Europeans and the United States have been for about 3 months on this issue.
Which is significant in itself. And just briefly, if you can, I know it's impossible, is Ukraine still losing territory, and where and how quickly?
Well, the short answer is not much. They still hold Pokrovsk, they still hold Chasiv Yar, they're still getting back into areas of Toretsk that they lost, and they're still holding another sliver of Kursk, which they took only a week ago, tiny sliver of territory, but again, it's on the Russian side of the border. So although the Russians are still making all the efforts that they made, they're actually not gaining any, in the last couple of weeks, they haven't gained any territory of any significance. I'm sure they will, but so far they're at a bit of a standstill.
OK. Always great to get your analysis on Sky News. Michael, thank you.